Hey guys, today I've got a really interesting video, really a towing test of sorts. And this is my first attempt to present a video like this, so definitely let me know if you like more content like this. But like I said, it's a towing test featuring my very own 2021 Ram 3500 going up and down an extreme grade that maxes out at 25%. That's right, I said 25% on the grade. At least that's what the sign says, and more on that later. But this towing test is en route to one of our favorite campsites. It's just over a mile, so it's a pretty short stint. You know, this really isn't a challenge in particular for most modern trucks while towing because it's so short. And I mean, just for comparison, one of my favorite YouTube channels, the Fast Lane Truck, as you probably know, they have the long-standing tradition with the Ike Gauntlet towing test. And at least in my opinion, that is a much more challenging test overall. It's about an 8-mile run and it maxes out, I think, right around 7% grade. But it's at significantly higher elevations. I mean, I think the top is just over 11,000 feet. So, you know, all in all, pretty tough conditions, especially with the duration factored in. Whereas in today's video, what I'm about to present to you, my humble test is just over a mile in length. And then it maxes out at just over 2,500 feet on the elevation. So although it does have a max grade of 25%, you know, versus the 7%, it's significantly shorter, and then of course lower elevation overall. So I guess in some ways you could think of it more like maybe a short sprint for a runner compared to the Ike Gauntlet, which is perhaps more like a challenging marathon. So all that to say, given how short my test run is, I think that most modern trucks, you know, in the last 10 years, perhaps even 15 years, they're gonna be able to handle a test like mine, you know, just fine, especially how short it is. But I still think, you know, it's very interesting because it is such a steep grade. It's interesting to see how the truck handles it, especially while, you know, towing such a heavy load. And so in today's video, we have the mighty Cummins 6.7 liter turbo diesel. Again, this is my 2021 Ram 3500. It has the high output Cummins with the 410 rear axle ratio and the legendary 6-speed Aisin transmission. So it puts out a whopping 1,075 pound-feet of torque and of course 420 horsepower. Now this specific build and configuration, it has a maximum towing capacity of 34,095 pounds and then a max payload of 5,095 pounds. That's specific to my VIN here. And I actually did a custom build about 2 years ago, and I highly recommend, by the way, if you're, you know, in the market for a truck, definitely do the custom build. In fact, I did a separate build video on it last year, so definitely check that out if you're interested. But with my Ram pickup, I'll be towing my 2021 Jayco Pinnacle. That's the 37 MDQS back there, and that has a gross vehicle weight rating of 16,995 pounds, and it's definitely maxed out with all my cargo inside. I'm usually within 100 pounds or so of the max GVWR, so we'll just round up and call it an even, you know, 17,000 pounds on the trailer. Now with the truck and the fifth wheel combined, last time I weighed us on a scale, the gross combined weight was just under 26,700 pounds. And so in today's video, we're going to find what is it like for nearly, you know, 27,000 pounds to go up and down a maximum 25% grade. Now I mentioned earlier, it's kind of like a short sprint, you know, for a runner in some ways, but I should clarify this test is not about how quick you can get up to the top because, you know, let's face it, it's windy and curvy on the road that you're about to see. It's more just about making it up to the top and then back down, you know, safely, given how steep that max grade is. And so as I make the climb and the descent, I'll show them back to back pretty much. Definitely stick around to the end afterward because I'm going to discuss some questions that I had along the way, and I anticipate you might have as well. So definitely stick around to the end. But with that, let's hop over to the footage, starting at the bottom and going up. And you can see the sign there shows a 25% grade. I think that's up to. We're gonna find out. I'm gonna keep this pitch and roll screen on here, and I don't know how accurate this is. The few times that I've used it, it seems like it's a little bit under. but I will leave it on just to see, and then I'll show you down here what you're looking at as far as the different tow settings that I've got on. And I'll try to toggle back and forth so you can kind of see what's going on here between this screen here, the RPMs, and also the temperatures. In fact, let me turn my gear display on too so you can see. So we're in third gear right now. And this pitch and roll only works below 25 miles per hour. So part of the time we may be going a little bit over that. But here we go. There's different sections that vary in how steep they are. So I've got it pushed down to the floor right now. Just went over 25, so that went away. Let's take a look at our temperatures. You can see there. Of course, we've been driving for about an hour, so those are the temperatures right there. Let's hop back to the off-road screen to see what we're at right now. We're in second gear here. And I think the steepest section is coming up right about here. Alright, so it's showing 9 degrees, 10 degrees. This was a lot steeper than 10 degrees, I'll tell you that. That's kind of where it's settling, it looks like. Yeah, I think the pitch and roll, it's not maybe calibrated properly because this feels a lot steeper than 10 degrees. I'd say we're definitely probably closer to that 20 mark. But I do not have my foot all the way to the floor. I could go a lot faster if I want, but you know, speed limit here is probably only about 25, 30, so with as narrow as it is, I'm trying not to go too fast. Let's hop back over to our temperatures and stuff. You can kind of see where we're at here. We are still in second gear, just over 2,000 RPMs, and we are almost at the top here. It just shifted into third. Up, nope, going back into second. We got another pretty steep section up here, and that's it. So we made it to the top. And that concludes the uphill portion, the journey to the top. As expected, no issues. But next, let's hop over to the downhill portion, the descent, which I recorded a few days later. You can see I've got the same settings here. The only thing that I've changed is on the exhaust brake on the way down. I've got it on full instead of auto. And so we'll go down and we're gonna let the truck do most of the work here and see how it goes. So here we go. And it is pretty foggy out. We had quite a bit of rain last night since we're up so high, so it's pretty foggy. But you can see we are in second gear and the truck is working pretty hard. And typically what I find is when you have this much weight behind the truck and you're trying to go at a slower speed, you know, under 30 miles an hour, which, you know, we have to do just because of the curves, that the engine braking and the exhaust brake can only do so much for you. And I've found the same is true. I had a 2019 Silverado Dually with the 6.6 Duramax and the 6-speed Allison, and it's kind of same story there. I mean, it's slowing you down, but you're still having to apply brake here and there. But this is such a short run that, you know, it's not. I'm not as concerned about burning up my brakes because it's not a, you know, several mile descent. And so I'm letting the truck slow down, and then every once in a while you can hear I'm tapping the brakes gently just to bring it back down, especially around the curves. But it is staying in second gear there. And I've found if I try to manually shift into first gear, it's too much weight. You know, when you got 17,000 pounds behind you plus the 10,000 on the truck, it's just too much for the engine alone to try to slow down. Now if we were going, you know, 30, 40 miles per hour down a hill, then I think that's where we would see more of the engine brake and the exhaust brake working, where we wouldn't have to use any brakes whatsoever. But that's kind of what I found, at least in my experience, going down this particular descent. And we're trying to keep ourselves under 25. That feels like a safe speed with the hills and everything here. We got a little bit of a flatter section here. Yeah, you can really feel that fifth wheel pushing. I mean, that is 17,000 pounds of weight just pushing. We got a flatter section here, so I'm actually having to give it a little bit of gas. You can see it shifted up into third. And then we got the last section right up here. All right, so we downshifted into second. And now, you know, it's a less steep incline like we're on right now. Now the truck's doing all the work between the engine and the exhaust brake. So, and there we go. So that kind of gives you an idea of what it looks like going down a steep grade like that with that much weight on you. Okay, so that concludes the downhill portion. Again, no issues as expected. But let me shift and cover some of the questions that came to mind as I was recording this. And the first one, this is really the big one, was that really a max 25% grade? I mean, especially given the pitch and roll display in the truck, you know, I think the highest that it showed was 11 throughout the entire run, and the official road sign shows up to 25%. Again, the truck only showed 11. So which is it? Because let's face it, that's a big difference, you know, between 11 and 25. Well, after I recorded the run going up and down, it dawned on me that the truck is displaying the pitch, or what we could say the grade, in degrees, right? Whereas the road sign is showing the grade as a percent. So I kind of had one of those mental lapses, and it finally dawned on me that those are two very different measurements. I mean, basically you can measure a slope or a grade in degrees or as a percent, and 11 degrees is not the same as 11%, just like 25 degrees isn't the same as 25%. But you can easily convert the two units. So if you take that 11 degrees that the truck showed and convert it to a percent, that's right at, get this, 20%. So that still leaves us with a 5% difference, you know, 20% grade max and what the truck showed on the pitch, which is 11 degrees, versus the 25% that the official sign shows. And I know sometimes in a video it's hard to get a sense of grade and elevation just on the screen alone. You know, in hindsight, I could have come prepared and physically measured the steepest part of the run using just a basic level and a ruler, but I did not come prepared, and so unfortunately I don't have those exact measurements. But what I did do afterward, really just out of curiosity, given that 5% difference, I did go back and use a topographic map online to get the starting elevation on the road and then the finish elevation on the road. And then with the distance of the entire run, which is 1.2 miles, I could easily calculate the average grade as a percent, keyword being average, of course. And so the base of the run starts at about 1,800 feet above sea level, and then it tops out at 2,530. And so that's a change of about 730 feet over a 1.2 mile distance. And that equates to an average, get this, 11.5% grade. However, if you remember the starting section of that run, it's not that steep. It actually has a couple longer, I'd say relatively flat sections. So that 11.5% average is probably not the most accurate representation of the entire run. So what I did is I went back to the topographic map and I pulled the elevation right after those two flatter initial sections, you know, right where the incline started to get steeper. And then using those numbers, which started at 1989 feet and then ending at that same 2530 at a distance of 0.6 miles this time, that yielded an average of 17%, okay, on that latter half. And, you know, like I said, there's definitely sections of the road that are steeper than others. And so with that 17% number, I wouldn't be surprised if there were at least one small section along the run that tops out at 25%. I mean, based on that, you know, that 17% average and the truck's pitch display, we know for sure that there were several sections in the 10 to 11 degree range, which equates to about 20% grade. So in the end, I'm going to conclude that the official sign probably is accurate, or at least close to being accurate, when it states that 25%, although the key word again is max, meaning it's not the entire run or even the majority of the run across that 1.2 miles. I mean, it seems like it'd be accurate to describe the average overall grade at 11.5% across the whole run, with the latter half then being closer to 17%. Which, considering all things, I think that still makes it a challenging hill to climb. You know, in case you didn't catch it before, as far as the pitch and roll calculator in the truck showing only 11 max, again, that is in degrees, which is an entirely different unit of measurement compared to percent. So in the end, it seems like the truck pitch calculator probably is fairly accurate, but definitely drop me a comment below if you found otherwise. All right, well, let me hit a couple other questions. And the next one is, when you were going down the mountain, why did you use your brakes so much? I mean, isn't a modern diesel truck supposed to be able to manage the speed on a descent like that between the, you know, the engine, the transmission, and the exhaust brake, right? So why did you use your brakes so much? And I'll answer that question in two parts. First, in my experience, modern diesel trucks, you know, within the last, let's say 3 to 5 years, they've made a lot of advances on this front. And I think all the brands are very aggressive in slowing you down, especially when you've got the tow haul mode activated, the exhaust brake and all that, you know, combined. In fact, in my experience, I'd say 80% of the time when I'm towing, you know, with my 17,000 pound fifth wheel back there at speeds, let's say in excess over 40 miles per hour, and I encounter a descent, you know, going down where normally I'd gain speed if no brakes were applied, I'd say about 80% of the time, just me, you know, lightly tapping the brakes once, or if cruise is engaged, then the truck with just the engine, the transmission, and the exhaust brake alone, you know, no additional brakes needed, ends up slowing down and maintaining the speed. That's been my experience while you know, towing this particular setup here. However, and second, I have found that when you're going at slower speeds, you know, in higher grades, let's say perhaps over 10% grade, under 30 miles per hour, then, you know, it's my experience, there's only so much the truck can actually do, especially when you've got that, you know, 17,000 pounds pushing behind it the whole way. You know, I mean, if the truck is unladen, then if I did that same run that I showed you, then no problem to handle that kind of grade and speed on its own without using your brakes, right? But with a heavy load like that and at a slower speed, that combination, for me, I find that I do have to use the brakes some. That's the key word. I'd say probably about 40 to 50% of the time. And, you know, I'm kind of alternating with the brakes on for a few seconds, then off, you know, as needed. But it's a short enough run that I don't think overheating the brakes is as much of a concern. You know, it's not as if I'm using the brakes alone to do all the work. It's more like a team effort where the brakes are simply acting in conjunction with the transmission, the engine, and the exhaust brake. And as I mentioned, I had a 2019 Silverado Dually previously before this truck, and doing that same exact run that I just showed you, my experience, I think it was virtually identical. I mean, this was about 2 years ago, but I'd say the only difference I recall was that the Chevys, you know, it's got some extra horsepower in that Duramax. It made it feel faster, you know, going up the mountain, but on the downhill portion, even with the aggressiveness of the Duramax, the 6.6 liter with the Allison transmission, you know, and the exhaust brake, all that put together, it really felt about the same from my recollection. I still had to use, you know, the brakes just a little bit. But I mean, I've probably done this specific uphill and downhill run that I showed you about a half dozen times with different truck and trailer combinations, ranging from a 3/4 ton diesel with a 10,000 pound travel trailer to my present setup. And I think when you get to a point where you have so much weight that's pushing behind you on that downhill portion, when it's that steep, that it's just more than your engine, transmission, and exhaust brake can handle by themselves. But remember, it's only about a mile run. It's so short. I mean, after doing that run, I've never had, smoking brakes or even the smell of brakes after doing that run, with engaging the brakes here and there to, keep a nice, safe speed. So anyway, that's my experience. But let me segue into a related question. And that is, why didn't you shift into first gear manually and have the transmission hold it there in first gear? I mean, if you were going too fast in second gear and using the brakes on and off at different times, why didn't you downshift, right? And just keep it manually in first gear and then let the engine and the transmission, slow you down more, right? Well, I think I tried that previously for a short stint on the same downhill run that I showed you about a year ago. Same setup, and what I found is the truck's computer didn't like it. It would keep shifting up into second gear. In my Cummins here with the Ison transmission, the RPMs go into the red on the gauge right around 3,200 RPMs. And the transmission, of course, being an automatic, it's going to shift up as needed, even if you're manually selecting a gear, to avoid damage to the engine. And so what I found is that first gear just wasn't suited well with the weight of the 17,000 pound fifth wheel on the back pushing, plus such a steep grade. And remember, that average grade on the steeper half of the run that I showed, it's around 17%, with the max likely around 25%. So certainly with a lower grade in the 6 to 10% range, this would be an entirely different story. But it seemed like the truck was the happiest in second gear while trying to balance a safe downhill speed and not ride the brakes all the way down. Well, folks, those are the main questions that came to mind as I was recording the run. But definitely drop me a comment below if you have other questions. This was really my first attempt to record a video like this one, a towing test. And I learned I could do a lot better in the future, especially on the technical side. But hopefully it still gives you an idea of how the Ram and Cummins platform, handles a steeper grade at slower speeds while, of course, towing a heavy fifth wheel. So, of course, I appreciate your feedback. And as always, thanks for watching.